I'm Casper, and my major is illustration. Your support will help students like me. Did you know it's Bronco Giving Day? If you listen to Boise State Public Radio, it's run by broadcast professionals and students like me. Thank you.
Since Boise State Public Radio was founded, students have been an integral part of day-to-day operations. Help us connect across campus and through our community. You can fund our student programs with your gift on Bronco Giving Day. Learn more and support at boisestatepublicradio.org.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio, I'm Samantha Wright, filling in for Gemma Gaudette, and this is Idaho Matters. I don't know if you can hear this, but I'm pouring a cup of tea as we speak. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, drinking tea with friends was far more than a social occasion. Taking high tea went beyond being social. For women, it was a safe space to build friendships, maybe find fellowship, work together, to build and shape communities. Laura Moore Cunningham loved to host afternoon tea parties. This remarkable woman lived in Boise and donated much of her time and money to support the Children's Home Charity, the Red Cross, Boise Junior College, and the work she did more than 60 years ago is continuing to be felt in the Treasure Valley today. And as part of Women's History Month, the Idaho State Museum is remembering her life with a special high tea gathering and a new exhibit. It's called A Life Lived for Others. Laura Moore Cunningham here to tell us more about it, our state historian, Hannah Hine, and curator of collections and exhibitions, Nicole Inglaterra. Thanks for coming back on Idaho Matters, both of you. Nice to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful to be here.
Okay, so who was, for people who don't know, Laura Moore Cunningham?
Laura Moore Cunningham was the daughter of Idaho pioneers and entrepreneurs who did very well for themselves as Idaho was developing. And she's a really remarkable woman because, of course, she's born in 1869 and lives until 1963 and leveraged a lot of her family's fortunes and her inheritance to reinvest that into her community. So yeah, everything from the Children's Home and Finding Society, Boise State University, the Red Cross, city beautification initiatives, all saw Laura's hand throughout her lifetime and beyond through the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, which is, I think, how a lot of people know about her today.
Well, she had a really remarkable life. She traveled, then they settled down back in Boise, and she did all these great things. Tell me about the exhibit. It's called A Life Lived for Others. Tell us more about some of what she did with her charitable work.
Yeah, so this exhibition is in the Idaho State Museum's Treasures Gallery. It's guest curated by Dr. Carol McGregor, who has been a longtime friend of the Idaho State Historical Society and had the very unique relationship with Mrs. Cunningham as having lived in her house for many years. And when she moved into the Moore Cunningham Mansion on Warm Springs Boulevard, much of what you see in the gallery today was in trunks all throughout that house.
Wow.
So Carol had the foresight to document copiously all of these pieces and then donated them to the Idaho State Historical Society, which forms a really remarkable collection of artifacts. And so this kind of chronicles Laura's sense of style and fashion, her family's very interesting relationships with their community throughout their lives. And we thought that this would be a great jumping off point to talk not just about Laura, but also the remarkable place that women's philanthropy plays within our history.
Can we talk a little bit more about that? Because Laura Moore Cunningham was not the only influential Idaho woman who did this sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. We're very fortunate here in Idaho to have a plethora of records that speak to the impact that women have had here over time. And if we consider the life that Laura lived from the 1860s through the 1950s and 60s, there was a shift in the trajectory of how women impacted society. And that shift really moved from having a focus on benevolence and doing for others because it was in their best interest, which then transitioned into looking at work through the lens of moral reform and ethical reform and trying to bring forth changes in society that way. And then moving into the 20th century, we see a shift in work where women were really collaborative, working in collective groups through the lens of reciprocity. So by giving, they also received something in exchange for that. And I think one of the women whose name is sometimes overlooked in that story is Roxy Johnson, and she was one of the founding members of the Junior League of Boise, who I believe is a sponsor for our exhibition at the Idaho State Museum. That organization, and they've been in the community for over 100 years, almost 100 years, doing really important work.
Wow, that's incredible. I should give some full disclosure here. I've lived in Boise all my life, and I did not know about Laura Moore Cunningham until I got into college. And for a couple of semesters, I received a Laura Moore Cunningham scholarship, and it helped pay for some of my expenses. That's when I found out more about her. And I want to know, is she well known in Idaho? Are you hearing from folks who have seen the exhibit who know who she was?
Hannah, my jaw dropped when I heard that. That's so fantastic because oh, sorry, not Hannah, Samantha. But yes and no. I think a lot of people see the name Laura Moore Cunningham because while Laura established the foundation at her death in 1963, she really was both happy to take the stage and be a mover and shaker in the philanthropic realm, but she also seemed to like being behind the scenes and sharing her wealth kind of more subtly as well. So there are people who I think know about her because of the foundation, but they don't know that the foundation really did reflect her actions in life and her passion for the community. So the foundation started more directly as funding scholarships at Boise Junior College then, which transformed into Boise State University, and has since really multiplied in its impact by funding everything from kind of personal causes across the state to major initiatives and projects. So I think some public television initiatives have been funded by the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation. We've had our agency has been touched by that foundation as well. But again, there are personal stories like yours, Samantha, that I think are really powerful too. While we haven't heard as many of them as I would like to hear, we know that those impacts have been felt. So we did have a really fantastic opening event, and some people who are more directly connected to Laura came to that and shared kind of their personal connection to Laura and the family.
Well, people may not know it, but they're seeing trees all over Boise that came out of the Laura Moore Cunningham Arboretum, which some people pass every day to work. I used to all the time. We're speaking with state historian Hannah Lori Hine and the Idaho State Museum's curator of collections and exhibitions, Nicole Inglaterra, about the new exhibit, A Life Lived for Others, Laura Moore Cunningham. And we know that Laura loved to host teas and other social gatherings. You're hosting a high tea at the museum on Saturday. I think it's sold out, but I wanted to talk about your focus on a high tea party. What is a tea party, and what happens at a typical tea party, especially back in Laura's time?
So Laura was known, and rightly so it sounds, as the Grande Dame of Boise. She was very strict with her etiquette. She actually studied elocution, so she had a very dignified, very precise accent that came about through higher education. So if you were to have tea at Laura's house, you were abiding by some of the very strict rules and regulations of society at the time, and probably closer to like of society as Laura had experienced it as a young woman. So pants were forbidden by women to be worn by women in Laura's house. And again, this is a place where there's high levels of decorum. She did have staff and such who would assist in service. So while we are not able to translate that directly into our offering this Saturday, we're really thrilled to partner with Divine Lotus Tea, who is providing some kind of custom selection of teas for our guests. We have some fantastic traditional tea eats that will accompany that. And of course, Hannah Lori and I are speaking to kind of fill in some of the gaps and provide the why for this event in relation to the A Life Lived for Others.
So why is it important to shine this light on Laura's life?
I personally think that this is an often overlooked realm of women's history. Philanthropy is, in my view, and there's some good scholarship to back this up too, it was really a way that women were able to shape their communities at a time where maybe they weren't expected to have a steering level voice or agency within their community. So I think some people might overlook a person like Laura Moore Cunningham, and not see the incredible amount of work that went into this. She was a director of the children's home. She took copious notes on the children, the cases that came her way as director. Even though this was not a position that she was hired to serve in, or she didn't have like traditional qualifications for it, she invested herself as well as her funds in ventures like this. And I think that's really remarkable and something that we're really excited to speak to.
You mentioned a few of the things that were found in her home. We've got about a minute left. Tell me what folks will see when they go and look at the exhibit.
So one of the showstoppers that I absolutely adore is the bay window from the Delamar house. This was Laura and her family's home from the 1880s to the early 1890s, before they moved into the existing mansion on Warm Springs. That house no longer exists, so it's really amazing that we have that. But we have the family came together and really provided some remarkable pieces. Like Laura's older sister, Alice Moore Bettis, actually was an artist. We have a painting from Alice. We have some of her mother's clothing to really frame how Laura was shaped by her family. And then quite literally, this chronicles Laura's life through style. So we have everything from her wedding gown, which she wore in 1898, to clothing that she wore towards the end of her life in the 1950s and 60s.
Wow. We've been speaking with state historian Hannelore Hein and the Idaho State Museum's curator of collections and exhibitions, Nicole Inglaterra, about the new exhibit, A Life Lived for Others, Laura Moore Cunningham, and it runs at the museum in Boise into June. We'll put a link on our website, boisestatepublicradio.org.
I'm Gemma Gaudette, and this is Idaho Matters.
Each morning, it's a new opportunity, a chance to start fresh. Up First from NPR makes each morning an opportunity to learn and to understand. Choose to join the world every morning with Up First, a podcast that hands you everything going on across the globe and down the street, all in 15 minutes or less. Start your day informed and anew with Up First by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts.